Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of A Happy Moment. My name is Dan. Glad to have you with me today. Today, I've got a very special guest. He is a comedian, author, and he wears many more hats than that. But just to name a few, he is Flobo Boyce. Flobo, welcome to the show.
You know what, Dan? This is so great to be on your program. In fact, I was a little like, I'm not sure if Dan's a cool guy, but in the back of that video, I see Conquer. So I know we're on the same page. We're on the same vibe. Shot to Conquer is bad for a day.
Yes, I'm glad you recognized Conquer. I've got the Conquer, got Godzilla back there. It's a that's a talking Conquer too, by the way. Do you want to hear him?
Oh, yeah. Does he say like bad stuff?
He doesn't swear.
Aw. That's so cool, actually.
Yeah, this was actually a wedding gift for my friend Steve.
Oh.
It's gonna be one of those days.
I like Steve already. Cool guy.
He is, he is.
That's awesome.
All right. Flobo, would you like to tell us a little about yourself? I know that you're involved in many things, like I mentioned. I'll let you take it away and introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard to describe what I do. I say people that I'm a live entertainment professional, but I'm originally from Brooklyn. I live in LA now, and a lot of slashes I do. I call them slashes. A lot of jobs I do. As of right now, that I do stand up, or I did. And I'm an author and content creator. I'm a baseball journalist. I'm a comedy writer. I'm a benefit auctioneer. I'm a wedding DJ, and it sounds like a lot. But I gotta be honest with you, Dan. The best way to describe it is this: I am lucky enough to talk into a microphone and be myself as a career. So wherever your event needs a microphone or someone to guide the process, whether digitally or in person, I'm your guy.
All right. Hey, let's start off talking about one of my favorite topics, and that would be professional wrestling.
Oh
I know
yeah.
you're a big wrestling guy.
Yeah, I mean, lifelong, man. I grew up, so in Brooklyn, our local federation was the World Wrestling Federation. So, like, I was a WWE guy from day one. I know WWE was hot for a while, and I've always felt them as a second promotion. But as it is right now, I've been able to cover wrestling as a journalist for about 10 years. I worked in as a ring announcer and commentator for about 15 over here in Mach 1 Wrestling in Anaheim. So, huge guy, man, lifelong. They can't get rid of me.
How old were you when you first started watching?
I think it's 92, 93. So again, I'm dating myself. So about 6 or 7 years old. I was way into Razor Ramon and Duke the Dumpster Drills. You remember him?
Oh
And
yeah.
Tatanka, man. Those were my big three.
I was always into Ultimate Warrior, Bret Hart,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
British Bulldogs. Yeah,
Do you have the
those
face
were.
paint? Did you do the Warrior face paint?
I didn't. I never had any face paint. Uh,
Well, there's still time. No, I'm kidding.
yeah. Hey, my next podcast episode, I might show up wearing Warrior face paint. I don't know.
Let's go. That'd be so much fun. Your guest is like, what are we talking about? I thought it was about my job.
Flobo, and you do have a YouTube channel, and I noticed that you have kind of a weekly show on there about NXT.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So the show is called Draped in Gold, and if you're an NXT fan from the Black and Gold era, you know that was a reference that Adam Cole said when he was in Undisputed Era. So it's a different kind of wrestling show. I know there's a bunch of wrestling podcasts out there, and everyone tries to be the smartest guy in the room. But on Draped in Gold, I try to be the dumbest guy in the room. So think of like an ESPN show like Party Interruption or First Take. So it's done in kayfabe, and what that means is we pretend that whatever we watch at NXT is real. And so we say, oh man, instead of saying, why did they lose or why did he make them lose? We say, oh my gosh, the guy hasn't won a match in a week. What's going on with his legacy? And we ask the dumb questions as if we're Stephen A, as if we're Max Kellerman, as if we're Colin Cowherd. So Jack Farmer's my co-host. He plays more like the heel, and he gets to be like and root for the heels and says that I'm off my rocker. Whereas I get to tell him, no, Jack, the way it should be, the sanctity of our sport is that you play by the rules, and we go back and forth. So it's really fun. I mean, NXT is a show that not almost no one watches, but compared to Raw and SmackDown and Dynamite, not as many people watch. So it gives a lot more leeway to have fun with the characters in the show.
Yeah, I started watching NXT. I want to say not from the beginning, but maybe from late 2014, early 2015. But then there was a period of time where I didn't have the internet, so I fell behind, and I'm still behind. I'm like in 2021 with my NXT viewing right now.
Ooh,
Uh,
yeah.
so I got some catching up to do. I know I'm getting close to where they kind of destroy the black and gold and they do the NXT 2.0, which I know a lot of people didn't care for. So I'm
Right.
not really looking to that, but
Uh,
uh,
you know what? I'm with you because like we were covering Draped in Gold was a pandemic show, so we covered right when it changed, and it's overnight. They took 2 weeks off, and then they came back, and everything was all light and colored and painted. And I was telling this to Jack because we had a certain format. I was looking at him going, what do we do? Like the show is so different now. Like, do we stop doing this? Is it awful? Like 10 characters debuted one episode. You're like, who's that guy? Why is it like this guy? Oh my gosh. And so it was rough. We took a hiatus too, throughout everything else, but like we got back and we kind of figured out how to make the new NXT into our format. And now that NXT is getting back to being popular again, it's totally been fun.
I haven't checked that out yet, but I have to check out your show because I actually did a wrestling podcast only for about 3 months, but like I also like did it in kayfabe because I just think it's more fun that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so many like different like analysts out there giving you like all this backstage information and news, and like, man, I don't care about that. I just want to, you know, go back to as a childhood, and pretend like all the stories are like real and everything, and
Oh,
it's
absolutely,
more fun
Dan.
that way.
Yeah, I think there's like two or three real wrestling sources, and everyone else just quotes what other people quote, what other people quote. So like, it's kind of lame. We were in like a room, and oh, you're a wrestling fan? He goes, oh yeah. Did you hear what happened backstage? You're like, yes, because we all go to the same websites. Like, you're not being any smarter than anything else. So like, Weird Al Yankovic say, dare to be stupid, be the dumbest guy in the room, be like, what? Like, and just silly ask questions.
Yeah, like I'd much rather talk about, so and so won a match because of his superior skill rather than, the other person lost because they had backstage heat. That's just
Yeah,
bleh.
I'm with you, 100%.
And hey, so we're just about on the eve of WrestleMania. What's your level of excitement for that?
I would say WrestleMania, like the Super Bowl, is kind of, or the Oscars if you're that kind of person. The event sells itself. Now, I'm a SummerSlam guy. I think SummerSlam's my favorite event of the year. But like, the WrestleMania could be a blank card, and I'll still be on board because you get the packages and the theme songs and the pyro and the giant set, and it's already there. So I'm already at 11. But this year's card has stacked. Even to the point where like matches that are throwaway matches on this year's WrestleMania would be dream matches, like LA Knight versus AJ Styles. That's something that's like the seventh or eighth most important match, but it's still something a match that sounds pretty dope. And I mean, I know people are not talking about it because the players themselves aren't a big deal, but that 8 tag team ladder match, or 6 tag team ladder match is going to be nuts. 12 bodies just flying everywhere for 2 sets of tag team titles is just bananas. And even my mom, who's in her mid 70s, called me up and was like, I heard The Rock is wrestling again. So, I mean, it's going to be the biggest event in a while, man.
How do you feel about the return of The Rock? How do you think that's going?
I liked it. I mean, look, I grew up with The Rock, so I would say the Attitude Era was pretty much tailored for me. I was a teenage boy when the Attitude Era was there, so nostalgia me is always great. I'm always worried about whether my heroes can still go. We've seen guys like Stone Cold come back. We've seen guys like Lita come back, or even Ricky Steamboat from a different time, and they all have varying degrees that they can go. And the last time we saw The Rock against Cena, he got injured, so it was like, I don't know if he can actually do that. But I will say this. I don't quite understand the pivot, but when it did, it still worked because the final boss character is something we hadn't seen. It was fresh. I think The Rock came in thinking he could be The Rock, and everyone booed. And what we got was this brand new character on top of what The Rock is, which we didn't get unless we were a Cody Crybaby, I guess. So I'm on board. I'm cool to see it. I think Cody finishes that chapter of the story. If he walks in to Mania and out of Mania without the title, I don't think I can believe in him ever again. But why not do that by going through The Rock and then Roman on the same weekend?
Yeah, I feel kind of bad for Cody because I feel like when he's in the ring with The Rock for their match, I think it might be a similar situation to um, when The Rock fought Hulk Hogan. Remember, Hulk
Mm-hmm.
Hogan came into that as a heel, but you know, the fans were pretty pretty thoroughly behind him,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I think they might turn on Cody,
It's a
but
possibility, but
yeah, I'm
thankfully, it's the numbers game, right? There's that the bloodline thing. Hopefully, they cheat. That's the idea. If it becomes a straight up match, you're absolutely right. But I'm hoping they cheat to force bloodline rules for the Sunday.
but yeah, it's like you said, it's definitely a stacked show. I'm looking forward to checking it out. Um, but Flobo, I understand that you can learn anything in life from pro wrestling. So you want to expound on that a little bit?
Absolutely. I was, a lifelong wrestling fan, and I would say, as someone who sometimes the intensity level will change, right? I'll be honest, I've never paid for cable in my life. So when my parents had it, I had it. When I went to college, I didn't have cable. I kind of fell out of it. But wrestling has always been a part of my life. And you think about things that happen in the real world about, hey, you really can't stick out unless you have a persona. Or, hey, look, your best friend could be your bitter enemy. Or you can fall in love with somebody, but all love stories end in tragedy. Or sometimes you're the main character of your story, and sometimes you're the valet of your story. I mean, all that stuff comes from professional wrestling. I learned that Kofi is a name that's given to Ghanese boys that are born on Friday. Why? Wrestling. Random ass fact, but you only know that because of professional wrestling. And I think that anything you could apply, I would say, hey, a character went through something similar. How did they overcome it? Hey, look, I'm D'Lo Brown. I'm both Intercontinental and the European Championship, but my best friend hit me with a guitar. Sounds specific, but it happens when someone betrays you. So it's so great. I think of it as like my lifelong guide in a way you have the ongoing stories.
Are there any, looking back at your time watching WWE, are there any particular storylines that stand out to you that are like imprinted on your brain?
I'll actually go recent back. So I know during the pandemic, a lot of storytelling changed, with the Thunderdome and all the fans, the screens and stuff. But even though he's kind of irrelevant now, which is kind of a tragedy, I love the whole Ted DiBiase, Cameron Grimes, LA Knight storyline of that time. Just the idea of bringing back the $1 million championship, just the idea of what that means to the megastar and having Ted DiBiase back is great. Historically, I was a fan of Redacted versus Austin, McMahon versus Austin. I think that was kind of the best ones of all time. The whole saga was about 3 or 4 years long. The Open Challenge from John Cena was a good one. The Summer of Punk of 2011, even though I was a bigger fan of the Straight Edge Society days personally, I think the Summer of Punk really not broke wrestling, but really made wrestling seem real to a generation of people who had grown jaded about professional wrestling. And then, of course, you can't forget about the Mayon Classic, the Evolution pay-per-view. All that stuff is pretty cool, too. So a lot of good stories in there. I'm more of a character guy, but there's a lot of good stories there in wrestling over the past couple of years.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the Cameron Grimes and Ted DiBiase LA Knight, because I think that's right where I'm at with my NXT viewing right now. Like
Oh,
the last episode I watched was Cameron Grimes. He's watching that video of Ted DiBiase, kicking the basketball away from the little kid, and he's trying to
yeah.
do that to people, and then it keeps backfiring on him. So I think that's where I'm at right now. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, another one of my favorites was Stone Cold Steve Austin going to the house of Brian Pillman, and Pillman has the gun. Do you remember that one?
Right.
Like
Almost got a
wa-
gun.
watching that as a kid, that was like that was crazy stuff, man.
The Attitude Era. I mean, granted, there are a lot of things we like, and there's a lot of things we don't like the Katie Vick or giving birth to the hand. But there's some things that are really beyond the pale, like Hawk jumping off the Titantron, or Beaver cleavage and his mom. Or remember the time where Big Show went to his dad's funeral and Boss Man took the coffin by a chain? He had a body surf on the way out. Just random things, man. It was awesome.
Uh, Boss Man, he was a vicious healer in the Attitude Era. I mean, there was that incident with the Big Show's dad and the funeral, and then Um, do you remember the feud that he had with Al Snow
Oh,
when
I
he
do remember that.
when he kidnapped Al's dog Pepper?
And fed it to
Yeah.
him. So that's a good point, because I had a break in 97, 98, because again I didn't have cable as a kid. In 99 it was really my jump back into the Attitude Era. So that SummerSlam, that whole era of the time with that and Pepper and even the Kettle from Hell a month after that was how I got reintroduced to wrestling. So imagine that, going from Tatanka and Razor Ramon to you ate a dog on Monday night. What?
Are you glad that the WWE has kind of evolved past that stuff?
Ah, that's a tough question. I want to say yes. The answer is yes, because wrestling historically has been for families. And I understand there's been ECW or GCW now or CZW that pushed the envelope or deathmatch wrestling. But traditionally, you become a wrestling fan when you're a kid and you either stick with it or you lapse out of it. I think ultimately it's the best for it. Look at the pandemic. And I don't want to set a conspiracy theory, but when the pandemic hit, the whole world shut down. But professional wrestling was determined an essential business in the state of Florida, which blows my mind as an entertainer because I couldn't get a job anywhere because everywhere else said I wasn't essential. I think if WWF or E were TV 14 or TV 30 or whatever, like there would be no way they'll get clearance. Now, obviously, making an essential business opens the door for AEW or TV 14 products to actually have their shows in Florida too. But something has to be the accessible brand. Something has to be the Bob Marley of that genre, and that's WWE. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, yeah. I was kind of surprised too that they were allowed to continue business in Florida. That was kind of interesting, but you know, I'm glad that WWE has kind of grown up a little bit. I can tell you that like I'm a big fan of women's wrestling, and if you're a fan of women's wrestling, the Attitude Era was not a good time. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm glad they've advanced past certain stuff that they did during that time. Um, yeah, and I
I'm
like
with
the
you. I'm with you.
yeah, and I like the direction that they've been going over the last year or so since who is no longer there.
Right. Yeah, it's
So,
interesting because I grew up not really knowing how good I mean wrestling was. Like, yeah, you hear stories about Joshi in Japan, but really, I traded one tape of my life. I was an avid tape trader, so you didn't really know what you were missing. As far as like the women's division in like 98. But like there was a time when I was 14, 15 going, okay, King, you don't have to say puppies every time. Like, is there something more? And if you take a step back, I actually watched some old 99 SmackDowns because again, I didn't have cable, so SmackDown was like really like my entry level back into wrestling. Uh, those matches were 90 seconds. Those matches were 2 minutes. You had like 15 matches on the SmackDown, and they were short. But as matches were getting longer and longer for the men, the women's matches were the same thing. And you're like, wow, that's kind of she came out and it was over. And I think the whole give divas a chance thing, I'm so glad I lived through that. And now, if you watch NXT 2.0, there are literally more women's matches on an episode than men's matches. I usually try to group divisions together, tag teams together, women's matches together. At first, I used to put all the women's matches together, but now there's so many of them, and there's so many storylines are away from the title. There's characters you just don't like other characters, which is even better. You can't just say, okay, now it's a women's segment. I have to treat it as a part of the show, which is what we really should get. I love Evolution. I know why they don't do it. I hope they bring it back. But the fact that that opens up the door to have a Kiana James or people contemplating a women's intercontinental title, that's amazing.
hmm yeah, and one of my all time favorite matches, not just for women, but women and men both, was the first NXT Takeover Brooklyn, Bailey versus Sasha Banks. That was like the first women's match that I watched. I like, wow, like that was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And they've and since then, women have had the chance to do a lot of main events, and business has really picked up for them. I'm glad to see it. And you mentioned Joshi a little bit. I'm a big fan of Stardom over in Japan.
Oh yeah.
Uh, yeah, that's good stuff. Hey, when you were growing up, did you have a Nintendo 64?
I did. I did. So I had to think about that because my parents are super strict, and my brother had a Nintendo, and I begged and begged for years for a game console, and so I got a Saturn at first, and then 64. So I got it. I got the little Rumble pack. We had parties after school. It was great.
Did you play the wrestling games on? They're like No Mercy and
Yeah, so I had rented WrestleMania and I loved it. And so when No Mercy came out, that was my thing. I didn't have Revenge, didn't have World Tour. But when No Mercy came out and that weird intro, And that Diggity Dog theme song. I was all about it. S.A. Reels was my guy. Even though like S.A. Reels is not really anyone's like favorite, he did all the moves. He had somersaults, he had Frankensteiners or Hurricane Ranas, and so that was my guy in that game.
I always thought Asterios was cool, especially when he first started out. He had Lita as his manager, and she would come in the ring and do a moonsault on his opponents too. That was
Oh,
fun stuff.
yeah. If
Yeah.
you're into C shows, like I'm a C show connoisseur. I don't care if it's Jacked, Metal, Velocity, ECW, WWE. Like I love C shows. They're great.
And so then, have you heard of that new game that's being made, Ultra Pro Wrestling?
No, tell me about it.
Oh, so you gotta check it out. It's called Ultra Pro Wrestling, and it's supposed to be like a spiritual successor to like No Mercy in those games.
Oh, okay.
Um, yeah, it's there was a Kickstarter for it last year, and I think the game is supposed to come out either end of this year or early next year.
Oh,
But I mean, it looks awesome. It looks just they're making it with the same style of graphics. They're going to do the same type of gameplay, but kind of advance it a little bit, modernize it a little bit, I think.
nice.
Um, but so they're not licensed with any company, but so it's going to be a fictional roster, but they're going to have a bunch of real wrestlers as downloadable content.
Okay.
So and they've man, I've lost track. They've got like 50 guys they've got so far, like legends and a few current people too. So it's shaping up to be really cool. I mean, they've got everyone from like Jake the Snake Roberts and Demolition, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Um,
Oh,
yeah, they just announced like a bunch of like almost 10 ECW guys too. So they're really stacking it, and it's definitely check it out. Ultra Pro Wrestling. I think it has potential to be like the best wrestling game ever, but
yeah.
I don't know. It's man, getting
Absolutely.
pumped up just talking about it.
I'm glad because I mean I don't know if you played Fight Forever. I mean it that had a lot of promise too, and
I
depending who
haven't.
you ask, it was either okay or not good. So having a good second option is always a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And Flobo, so you spent some time as an esports caster. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's another thing that came through the pandemic because I was not essential, right? As a comic, and because comedy clubs are made to pack you in, right? And that time we're all being all social distance. I got into e-sport casting by accident. I play a game called Rocket League, which was known as basically a bunch of cars playing soccer, 3v3, kind of playing soccer. And I was part of a senior circuit. Those are for gamers over the age of 30. That's what it means to be senior. And so they had a tournament one time. This is like the late April of 2020. Like, this is like fresh pandemic. We thought pandemic was going to be like 6 weeks and then you go back to work. They were having a tournament. And they're like, "Hey man, you're a comedian. Can you like hop on and just like say like old man jokes while the show's going? Like pull over, grandpa. Like time for your nap. Or drink some prune juice. Let the crap go, kind of a thing." And so I did that, and I thought it was fine. I thought it was kind of cool. But at the end of it, people were like, "Hey, man, you really gotta like pursue this. Like, you are a caster." And I'm like, "What's that?" It goes, "Hey, you have Discord?" I'm like, "What's Discord?" I had no idea. And so I joined a rec league called Major League Esports, or Minor League Esports, excuse me, as a Rocket League player. And as a caster as well, I said, "Hey, look, I can get the microphone for some of these games if you want someone." And then one thing led to another. So I did whatever weekend I had free, because again, I wasn't going anywhere. I jumped on these weekly showcases, which led to College Rocket League, which led to doing some of the ROCS and other regions of the sport. And it got ingrained in this community. And at the same time, there really was a need for other voices in esports, whether it's from women or people of color. So I kind of got that way. And it became a cool thing to be able to practice commentary in a humorous way, in an analytical way from a game I actually play and love. And so it's been a trip.
Wow. Is that something you still do?
I do. So it's kind of esports winter right now. A lot of things have contracted a bit. Like I used to be part of the CRL squad, College Rocket League. But as of this week, I just did shows with Madden, Formula One, WWE 2K via ESFL. So always get myself out there.
Are you content to just be announcing, or would you rather be playing in those tournaments?
I'm terrible. I thought I could do it. Like I really thought that I could do it. I when I'm playing Rocket League, I think I'm the best guy ever. And though I join the team and I'm like the worst player, the worst team, the lowest league, I go, okay, all right, back to the booth. I still play the games myself for fun, but as far as competitively, as much as I think I would love the thrill, there's only sometimes you can get punched in the jaw. You go, you know what, boxing isn't for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I've never really been very good at any games that I can think of. You know, like you play a game and like maybe you do really well playing against the computer, and you're like, oh yeah, I can go online and I can play against other people, and then you quickly find out that uh, that's probably not going to happen. You're
Oh yeah,
I,
yeah.
I'm with you down there in the bottom leagues.
For real. And then having commentary be like, what were they thinking? I mean, like Dan had no plan. Like, you know, I mean, like, Flobo, he sucks. So yeah.
How about just like in your free time? Do you still like to play anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just downloaded WWE 2K24 and on my to-do list after this show. I'm gonna go and fire that up because it's just WrestleMania weekend. I'm getting some friends over, so we're gonna play the games on Friday night before the things. But I try to make time to play Rocket League, and the reason why I got into Rocket League, if you want to hear that story, was I worked a corporate job and I got fired from that corporate job. I worked in marketing, if anyone cares, but I got fired on Thanksgiving Day, 2017. They called me up. Accounts payable called me up. They asked for my address to disperse my 401k. And I was like, but why? Why are you dispersing my 401k? Oops. Call you back. Turns out I was fired on Thanksgiving Day. And so November is a tough time to find work because it's the holidays. No one's going to hire in December for a full-time job, fiscal years and all that. I was DJing weddings as a hobby on the side, and a bit of rage, I just deleted my website, relaunched it as a wedding DJ website out of desperation. November is peak time for engagements, and so you get to slide in and hopefully get some weddings to DJ. And I became a DJ. The problem with that is now I have to hunt for work. I have to call up clients and venues and prove to people sight unseen because there's no proof of me doing it that I can DJ their weddings. And I was just like nervous, and it was nerve wracking day after day getting told no and no and no. Bills are piling up. I'm maxing out credit cards. And so I used to play Rocket League just as a way to break the tension. It's a quick game. It's a 5-minute clock in game, about 8 minutes in real time. And so I would get on every 4 or 5 hours to get rejected. I'll say I'll play to the end of the hour to refresh the palette and then go back into get these rejections. So it really became like a mental break because when you're playing Rocket League, the game is so back and forth and intense. You're not worried about who's calling you back or the bills in that moment. You're just playing the game as fast as you can. So it was a way for the mental health thing. So I always tell Rocket League saved my life. I always try to give back to it when I can. So when it came down to being a caster for Rocket League, I was like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm here because of it. Let's rock and roll.
Very nice. And so, as your job as a caster, um, is that a paid job?
It can be. So the thing about video games is that sometimes you're part of these developer-sponsored competitions and leagues where there's prize money and you charge day rates, and sometimes you're part of communities that charge you hourly at a lower rate. Sometimes it's a hey man, you're free, and it's that balance of like not getting paid but making sure you're still relevant. So I've done all. I've done high tier day rates. I've done community hour rates. I've done pro bono stuff. It's really coming down to how you're giving back to the community. So it can be. I would say I'm old enough to know it's a nice to have in my career. And I would love to do other things, but there's people who came up after me who are literally half my age, and they believe that's their path to actually having a career, doing nothing but this. So I always try to take opportunities as I'm given, but I never also try to strong arm anyone and taking food off their plate. If you think that's what you want to do with your life, then I'm not going to be like, hire me only, guys. It's more like, oh, wait, bonus channel. There's a match that needs someone. You available? I can always do it. I can hop on. Not a problem.
Very cool. And you talk a little bit about how you got started in stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I almost died once, and that's why I
Oh,
decided to do comedy. So I was a kid, and I wanted to have my own late night talk show, like most of America, and it was definitely one of those things where it was like, man, one of these days I'll have my own comedy show. Oh yeah, you'll see when I'm 20, when I'm 25, when I'm 30. You know what I mean? Like I kept putting it off. And so when I was younger, I used to be very very heavy. I was about 375 pounds. and I worked to get that weight off. I lost 150 pounds, but I had all this excess skin, extra skin. So I had the skin surgery to remove it, and after that surgery, I had complications with my suture line. Part of my suture line, where they put me back together, had opened up one night. I was bleeding out of my couch. And blood is like warm and it's sticky and it's gross and it wouldn't stop and my sides were hurting because my skin had opened up. And my mom saw everything and she was freaking out at the time. And when you think you're going to die, and I say this a lot on podcasts, people say, "Oh, you're so calm about it," but at the time it was freaking me out. But when you're about to die, you panic until you don't. You're like, "Oh my god," and you're like, "You know what? I had a good run." But I noticed all the small regrets I had. I wish I had more money. I wish I asked more girls out. I wish I went to more places. The big regret I had was I never got a chance to try comedy, something you kept putting off because you said someday, someday, someday. And I said if I ever survived the night, I would. So I'm bleeding out. I had ab surgery, so I couldn't really twist my body anywhere. I'm trying to hold the part from bleeding. As far as calling the cops or calling the emergency offices, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be moved because I had such my wound was so big I couldn't be moved. My doctor said the suture line wasn't sterile enough, so he couldn't come and restitch it. I basically had to cold compress it or wet compress it to hold it in place and hope it congealed. But I couldn't go on my stomach because I had ab surgery. I couldn't land on my back because the cut was on the side of my body. So I literally slept on one left cheek all night, and I made it. It was a Saturday to Sunday. The last thing I remember was Saturday Night Live coming on TV. I woke up. I had a 4-inch long Jello mold of my blood on the side of my body, and I said that was the least on life to try. So 6 months later, after that, I took my first comedy class, and that was summer of 14. So this is 10 years now. And I had my first comedy show August 10th, 2014, here at the Comedy Store in LA, which is kind of a very famous comedy club here in town.
Man, that'd be pretty terrifying. That'll definitely make you reassess your life a little bit. Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it is, right? If you were ever a James Bond movie or watcher or book reader, you only live twice, is what Ian Fleming would say. Once when you're born and once when you stare death in the face. And I really felt that 29, because I'm going to be 39 this year, that there really was a switch, a chapter change of who I was and what I become, right? Trying to work with the microphone, being confident and selling my wares or my business or trying things in a booth. Like there's a different level of performance that happened after that near-death experience than before.
Would you say that comedy came pretty naturally for you, or did you struggle a lot early on?
I think I know when the mood has changed. Like I'm really good at reading the room of what kind of humor people will appreciate, whether it's clean humor, dirty humor, racial jokes, not racial jokes, religious jokes. I'm good at that part. But the actual mechanics of writing jokes, I had to learn. I mean, I know there's some people that say, "Oh, one time I went up to an open mic and I killed them." I went to a class. It was a 6 weeks course. The first time I did comedy, I did very, very well because I had 17 of my friends in the audience. It was a hot crowd for me, so I could basically not do anything. Like, oh, yeah, great. The second time I did comedy, I bombed really hard. One of the worst times I ever bombed. And that was a good reset to be like, okay, do you want to do this? Are you good at this? And so I had to really learn of why is that funny to me? Like what makes me laugh about this topic or this premise? Let me see what I can do to make sure that people see my perspective so they can laugh with me too.
Do you think it bombed just because it was the wrong audience for the types of jokes you were telling?
Oh, I can give that story, sure. So I did my first comedy show on a Sunday night, and it was August 10th, 2014. Did a comedy show. Everyone loved it. I woke up next day with like the biggest high ever. I thought I was the funniest guy. The funniest guy Monday. Tuesday, the funniest guy. Oh man, 2 days ago, I killed it. And the Wednesday, I go, you know what? I'm going to let it ride. There's another comedy club across town called Flappers Comedy. This is Wednesday. That was 3 days after the comedy show. Now, for context, the Monday, the day after my first time and before my second time, Robin Williams, the comedian, had just passed away. He had died by suicide. So I go to this comedy club called Flappers. It's in Burbank, and Burbank is right outside LA. But it's very, very sleepy. It's a very safe town. People kind of go home at 9:30 at 10 o'clock. So it's a late night show at this comedy club, but it's also late night in Burbank. and I'm waiting to go to do my second set. And it's kind of ironic because I had Donald Trump jokes, but this is before he was president, so they weren't political. They were just jokes about the guy from The Apprentice. It wasn't like a thing. But the guy before me, who got on stage, his whole entire bit was about how Robin Williams was weak for killing himself. And so what happened is it was called walking the room. People got up and left. They were disgusted. It was only a day after he passed away. Why would you say that? So now it's 11 o'clock in Burbank. The majority of the room have walked out of this comedy club. There's no one on the street to bring in because it's 11 o'clock in Burbank. And I go on stage and be like, hey, it'd be kind of cool if Donald Trump was Batman. It was awful. It was the worst time I ever had in my life. And I was like, but I mean, Joker, you're fine. That's classic. It'll work. And I got in the car and I was like, oh man, what a fall from grace. 3 days ago I was flying on top of the world, and now I don't know if I want to do it. And I lived in Culver City, so I had to drive cross back town at night, just living in it. But to me, I learned a very important lesson about reading the room, a important lesson about performing and having a good time even if you bomb, and understanding bombing as part of the process.
So when you were first learning to be a comedian, were there any other comedians that you kind of looked up to and inspired you?
So yeah, growing up, I was a Jay Leno guy, and I loved Trevor Noah's Crazy Normal album. Like that was his last album he did in Africa before coming to the United States. But when it comes to comedy, it really is like a class. The ones that you come up with at the same time, ones you go to the same clubs with, you kind of see over and over again. It's kind of like coworkers in the same spot, and you kind of grow together. And you'll notice that too when you see like a documentary, like the Improv or like whatever a club is. It's like, oh yeah, Jerry Seinfeld was hanging with Paula Poundstone, who was hanging out with George Carlin. It's like this tight community, and it kind of shifts based on the levels of experience. So I would say, yeah, it's kind of like the pack I run with,
Are you a fan of the shows like Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the best improv player, but I'm a fan of the show itself. Yeah, for sure.
Have you ever done any?
I did short forms. My buddies really improv, and sometimes I have like friends night where you bring somebody who's not an improv person and you have to do it. And I go, okay, it's cool. It's kind of fun. It helps out. It's a nice little skill. I say stand-up comedy is like weightlifting. Improv is like CrossFit. And so they're similar, and one can help the other, but they're very different.
Flo, let's talk a little bit about your book that you released. I think it was back in 2021,
Yeah,
graduation day. All right.
absolutely.
No, please go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, yeah. I know if you had a question. So let me take a step back. I'm a fiction writer, first and foremost. I've been writing novels and short stories for as long as I can remember. But my last book, Pay the Vig, didn't do very well. Didn't do very well. It wasn't written well, to be honest with you. I didn't really like it. The sales were terrible, and I was going to give it up. Now you're in the pandemic, nothing to do, and I said, "Hey, look, I'm going to quit writing because no one buys my book. Let me do something I always wanted to do, and that was write a memoir, write something nonfiction." And that was the original reason why it's called Graduation Day. But I thought about what Graduation Day meant to me. And when I graduated college, you usually go to the auditorium or gym or whatever, and then there's a commencement speaker. And depending on what school you graduated from, it's probably somebody famous, president or a comedian or an actor. My commencement speaker at my college was a district manager at Walmart. And it was so underwhelming. That was the guy our school chose to tell us good advice about our future. I never felt prepared. I did 4 years of college. I got the paper, but how do I apply this? And so what Graduation Day ended up being was the first chapter telling you that story, the last chapter of me actually writing a commencement speech, but the chapters within were adult adventures I dealt with and what I've applied from school and what I had to learn on my own, basically all my failures from up at that point, but they're kind of into life lessons. And the idea is that, hey, look, I somehow stumbled through it and I'm here today to share it to you. So it ended up becoming like a gift I can give to people. In fact, my cousin's kids are 17 years old and I gave her a copy. I was like, hey, look, you're going to college, read this. And I can't believe I can say that. I even wrote a book about going to college.
You plan on writing any more books?
It's funny because the nonfiction one did very, very well. And I was like, oh man, I want to hear more of these stories. And like there's a chapter in there where as a DJ, I got booked to do a wedding in Italy with Italian American people. So like they're from like the East Coast, but they want to go back to the home country and they want an American DJ, and I get booked and I get lost in Italy. And so here I am trying to navigate the Italian countryside, knowing 3 words of Italian while the sun is setting and I'm running out of time. And I become such a ugly American, as they say. I'm freaking out. For some reason, of all the chapters, that wasn't even the hardest one to write, but for some reason, that was the one people go, "Oh my gosh, that's crazy. We want more." And I go, "It wasn't supposed to be anymore. I was supposed to retire after that. Like I was supposed to be the last book ever." So the answer is, Dan, I don't know. Do I have more failures? Plenty, but I'm not sure if there's another book on the way on that series of nonfiction books.
uh, so you're still a young guy. You mentioned you're 39 years old, so you're very young.
Go on.
So looking back at everything that you've done in life so far, is there anything that stands out as something you're particularly proud of?
Well, I would say last year in 2020, no, I'll say November 2022. So I used to work for Spotify. I had a show on that network. It was called the Ring of Wrestling Show. And there was a slate of wrestling talk shows, podcasts on that slate. And I was on a show called Mac Mania. You can go back and check it out. And they canceled the show. And I was kind of like, hey, them's the breaks, kid. And Spotify, to their credit, loved them. They were one of the best employers I ever had. I worked with entertainment companies my entire adult life, but Spotify, to their credit, was very nice. They paid us out the back half of our contract. So we didn't even have to finish the episodes. They go, hey, look, we just go in a different direction. Here's your money. And imagine getting a whole year's pay in a check, singular. And you're like, whoa, you know what I mean? And so 2023 was really a time for exploration for me. I know it's a privilege. I know sometimes you are paycheck to paycheck. You think about traveling, but I got to do things I didn't think I would do with a perfect balance of professional and personal. And what I mean by that is I'm a big baseball guy. I'm doing a baseball ballpark chase where I get to go to different ballparks and see them as personal, but professional. I started leaning into baseball journalism, especially from the Black fans' perspective. So it became like a business opportunity to say, hey, look, in Milwaukee, don't sleep in Milwaukee. Here's what I did when I was here. And that got us an opportunity via a podcast I'm on called the Black Baseball Mixtape to fly out to Dubai to cover Baseball United's showcase. I never thought about going to Dubai my entire life, but now one thing led to another, and it did. My mother, when she left the islands to come to the United States to have a new life, she spent a couple of years in Scotland in her early 20s as a nursing student. Got a chance to go to Scotland, saw the same streets my mom walked on, possibly while drunk. I mean, everyone drinks over there, and I loved it. You know, I mean, that was a cool moment, and opened up the blog. So having more time to try out what I want to do in life, it was almost like playing a video game. And the first level, they give you all the power ups, what it looks like, and then they strip you from it. So I'm not there now. I'm back to being broke as a joke. But the fact that I got to live the life I wanted to for a year, and I didn't blow it on candy. I didn't blow it on cars, but I got to see things, see people, find new opportunities to see where I could work, try new things, try new esports, try new podcast ideas, sharing people on this podcast shows like yours about my books and stuff. I go, I want to do more of that.
Okay, so that kind of ties into my next question a little bit. I was just going to ask you, like, what kind of things do you still hope to accomplish in your life?
Yeah, not being broke. That's the idea,
Yeah.
man. Like I said, that's kind of the hard crash is super hard because you see the other life and you're like, oh no, ramen's prices have gone up, and that's kind of the thing about being creative. You got to go with the ebbs and flows, and people always ask me if you had a chance to do what you want to, what was it? And I could say I've been lucky enough to do what I envisioned. Is it the late night talk show that you think of? No, but that genre is struggling to exist as it is anyway. But if there's ever an opportunity, I could do this. I could do more shows like yours. I can do more benefit auctioneering. I could do more DJing weddings, do more stand-up comedy shows, but do it in a way where it's just lucrative for me, then I'm fine. I know they say the money comes and it shouldn't be the money thing, but I've got bills to pay, right? So I'm happy professionally. I'm happy being able to be myself. I'm not in an office. I'm not wearing an ugly tie. I'm not getting yelled at by customer service. But at the same time, you kind of wish that you're not doing all these podcasts for naught. You're not doing your art for no one to see. You're not doing stand up jokes to empty rooms, that sort of thing.
Do you have any plans to launch a podcast?
Well, I got 5 now.
Oh, okay.
We talked about Draped in Gold, the wrestling one. I have an art and culture podcast, quite like yours, called New Amsterdam Radio, that airs every Thursday, where I sit down and talk to people like yourself. We're just creatives and good people and entrepreneurs. And I've had one called Flobo Boyce on Netflix, where I do quick reviews of shows, original series. I have a Star Trek one that's on hiatus right now. So I do have a lot of those, I guess. And of course, the Black Baseball mixtape, which I do not own, but I'm a lead contributor on. So podcasts are always going to be a part of my life because it allows me to share opinions in a way that hopefully it's informative and entertaining. But as far as the next step, like a podcast in like the sense where I got the giant studio and I'm on ESPN, I mean, that would be great. Dan, if you know anybody, let me know.
Well, Flobo, with all this, with all the podcasts that you do, would you might have some advice for a newbie?
Oh, yeah, I got lots of advice. So a lot of podcasts die around episode 8. And what happens is once you get past the thrill of having a new concept, then comes the grind of how often you're going to do these shows. And there's going to be some episodes where you don't really have an idea. And you have to, you basically at a crossroads of going, is it a hobby? Do I come back when I have an idea? Or do I just try to find a way to make it more regular, like something would be if you went to, say, a McDonald's and if you didn't have a Big Mac that day, you would complain. So what ends up happening is there's people who will do 6 episodes or 5 episodes in a row. Great. Then there's that weird break. They're not like, hey guys, we were gone for a month and now we're back. And then it kind of just dies. So that's part of it. That's kind of the natural order of things. Your idea, your premise, because that's the only way you're going to have listeners. There's only 2 kinds of podcasts. One ran by celebrities or people of note, and one that are ran by people like you and me, but have a cool concept or a fresh concept. Your format is what makes you popular. Understand, though, there's going to be times you're not going to feel it. There's going to be times when you don't want to do it and you have a decision to make of either, hey, I'm going to do less episodes, tell your audience you're going on a break, or you're going to pod fade. But that's something that's supernatural. Do I plan to make money off the rip? I know some people try to do 3 episodes and go, let's get sponsors. If I have a car wash in my neighborhood, I may throw you a couple bucks, but I don't think Walmart is going to care about your podcast with 4 friends talk about movies in their basement. It's not going to happen. And of course, if you want to do the whole affiliate thing, that's one thing, but that requires you having a fan base, buying the products, and using your promo code for you to get money on there too. So to answer your question, 8 episodes is a big test. If you pass that, you're over the hump. Don't expect to make any money off the rip, and it's okay if it's a loss leader for whatever your creative endeavors are. And 3, have fun, because there's so many podcasts out there. The odds of you having an original idea are pretty nil. So just make sure you enjoy it.
Yeah. I had to take a break for almost a year from after I started, and I just fired it back up in February.
Yeah.
So what I did this time around to try and help avoid that pod fade was I made sure that I pre-recorded like a few months worth of episodes, just so I don't have to keep churning out like new content every week. If I'm not feeling it one week, I got all these back episodes I can just throw out there. So it, that definitely helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Stacking episodes is a godsend. Just breaking your own format. If you have a certain structure, and one day being like, guys, I'm not feeling it. Let's have some fun today, and keep making it fun for you, then that's the way it is.
Yeah, yeah. Early on, I mentioned I had a wrestling podcast that only lasted a few months, and you know, wrestling, it's hard coming up with new episodes all the time for that because the wrestling world, it never stops. It's there's always something going on, and that's why I had to stop that. There's just too much going on and too much going on in my life, so had to put an end to that, unfortunately. But that's why I started a happy moment back up again, and I'm having fun with this and meeting lots of cool people like yourself. So
Stat.
yeah, so it's definitely fun. That's probably my favorite part of doing this is just meeting all the different people that normally I wouldn't meet otherwise. So definitely a
No,
lot.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Flobo, uh, start wrapping things up a little bit here. So let me ask you, is there any match on the WrestleMania card that you feel 100% that the title will change hands? Any of the title
Oh
matches?
yeah, definitely the undisputed Universal Championship. Roman Reigns has to lose this weekend, and trust me, I like it. I acknowledge him, tribal chief, but Cody went to WrestleMania last year and came out empty-handed. I saw that coming. I told people it's going to happen because WWE is not dumb. They have to reestablish who Cody is to fans as they got the next chapter as being part of Endeavor and TKO Holdings. If Cody goes in a second WrestleMania and walks out with nothing again, I don't think anyone's going to believe in him ever again. Oh, we'll still say, whoa, but we'll never believe in Cody Rhodes ever. He has to win. And if they don't, they better have something for him because I will riot from my couch here in Los Angeles because it makes no sense. So yes, I'm gonna put it out there. I'm gonna say Roman is no longer the champ, and of course the tag team championships. You got two center titles. They really haven't unified them as far as giving them one piece of metal. So both or all four belts are going to be on ladders with 6 teams at play. I got a feeling they're going to separate the tag team titles here. So I think those are the big two for me.
Yeah, I I would agree with that, and I also think I don't know, it might be time for Io to drop the belt to Bailey. I don't know. I'm looking forward to that match
Mm-hmm.
though.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Well, don't get me started because Bailey is my favorite wrestler on the roster now, full stop, male or female. And she won the Royal Rumble, but she's been an absolute afterthought into this WrestleMania season. But Io's run has been pretty weak. So hear me out. As much as I like Bailey to win, I do see Io winning via the numbers game, with Backlash being 4 weeks away and that being a rematch that gets the true main event treatment that she should have gotten as being the Royal Rumble winner.
I can see that happening. Um, you know, I'll say this about that match. Uh, I am gonna. I'm probably gonna lose it if Bailey comes out to her old hugger theme. If we see the return of the hugger, I'm gonna pop pretty big for that.
I would. I doubt it, but I would. But then again, we got Thugonomics at 35. So if we got talking Thugonomics at WrestleMania 35, I would probably pop super hard myself.
Yeah, well, Flobo, I hope you have fun watching WrestleMania. And so your YouTube channel, just people search for Flobo Boyce.
Yeah, I've earned it, man. I'm so glad. I mean, yeah, you put YouTube, put Flobo Boyce, and all my stuff comes out there. Do Sam Draped in Gold, Flobo Tries, where I eat crazy foods, hotel tours, and more. Or just put Flobo Boyce in the Google machine. Took me 15 years, but I'm finally on page 1. Take that, Flowbots. Yeah.
Are there any, do you have any social media places that you hang out at?
Absolutely. I'm on that X now. I guess they call it X. X. I have Blue Sky. I'm never there as much. Threads. Instagram, I'm at Flobito. It's a little different. FLOBITO. I'm over there. Instagram. I post more of the baseball content over there. But truthfully, YouTube and that X is where most of the new thoughts and video and content come from.
Okay, very cool. Let's see if Conquer has any closing words here.
I don't feel so good now. Ugh.
Wow. He loved the show. He loved my responses.
Well, Flobo, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, and thanks everybody for listening. Once again, Flobo Boyce, very cool guy. So thank you for joining me. And for those who would like to interact with me online, you can find me on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Just search for A Happy Moment. And I will see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.